Fabian Cancellara won in authoritative fashion at the Tour of Flanders on the weekend. We'll review the race and scrutinise a few of the teams, particularly BMC Racing, Europcar and Lotto Belisol. Plus, this weekend, the Queen of the Classics, Paris-Roubaix, is coming up. Can anybody beat Cancellara? Peter Sagan won't be riding. As for a tip, some healthy living, Targeter on board, we're going to take a look at beetroot juice. But first up, it's Peter's pinch. What did we make of his performance on the podium at the Tour of Flanders? This is the Bike Lane. He's Mr. Cycling Tips. He's the Olympic Games gold medalist. And I'm Matt Keenan. At the Tour of Flanders on the weekend, Peter Sagan was dubbed as one of the big pre-race favourites. And whilst on the bike, he performed with class. Then off the bike on the podium, it was a little different with Peter's pinch of one of the podium girls. Sadly, the podium girl is getting more attention than Marianne Vos, who was the winner of the women's race. We're joined on the line by Bridie O'Donnell, a former Australian champion. Bridie, what did you make of Peter's performance on the podium?
I thought it was completely unacceptable, and he needs to be made, it needs to be made very clear that that is completely unacceptable behaviour, and obviously we know that workplace harassment is not acceptable in any country. Unfortunately, the context is a little bit different. But I think your point about the comparison between the woman on that podium and Marianne Vos, who had demonstrated an extraordinary performance only probably 2 hours earlier by winning her very first round after being a world and Olympic champion. I was so incredibly disappointed that that race wasn't telecast live on television for us to see.
Hey Bridie, what do you think about the cultural differences between what we have here in Australia versus in Europe? Does that make it any more or less acceptable?
I do think it is very different, Wade. We know that there is legislation here in Australia that prevents workplace bullying, workplace harassment and sexual harassment. Those kinds of things are completely unacceptable, and often victims of those things can feel confident that if they went to an employer and made their case, then people would listen to them very sensibly. Having raced in Europe and spent a lot of time around Italians and Italian men, and knowing a lot of Eastern Bloc men, we know that there is no legislation in Italy protecting victims from things like this. It was only last year, I believe, that a male senior judge in Italy had ruled that a woman had not been raped because she'd been wearing jeans. Now, with a country like that where women's rights is sort of pretty much non-existent, and I don't know about Slovakia, but I can only imagine that they're not any better than Italy. All I'm saying is that that provides a context then for someone like Peter Sagan. I mean, I think there was a picture from 2 weeks ago when Fabian won E3 Press and he had come second, that he was gesturing to do this to a woman's buttocks only 2 weeks ago, and I remember someone putting that picture up on social media. Perhaps someone had said, I bet you won't do it, and he said, I will, and then he's done it properly, fully 2 weeks later. So this is a bit of a young boy's mentality as well, and they're probably daring him and enjoying it. I mean, a lot of young male cyclists, older male cyclists perhaps, have met women because they've been podium girls. Some of them have married them. I don't think George Hincapie or Manuela Cinciato, both of whom are married to women who have been podium girls, would appreciate their own girlfriend getting groped or their own wife getting groped by Peter Sagan. And yet they've met women through this context and clearly been attracted to them and asked them out. So the line is very blurred there.
Well, Bridie, it was great to see Marianne Vos actually win the race. She is one of the greats, not just of women's cycling, but of cycling all round. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. Great to talk to you.
They're the thoughts of Bridie O'Donnell, a former Australian champion. Wade, what do you make of it, the Sagan pinch?
I think it's making a bit of a mountain out of a molehill. Just with the way I see the debate going on social media and in the media with regards to should podium girls even be up there and should we be changing that tradition. I like the tradition as long as it's kept respectful, and Sagan was the one who made that disrespectful and tarnished it. But it's I think it's just getting a little out of control just because of it's a good story to write.
Scott?
Well, I think it also shows the differences between us here in Australia and perhaps the United States as well, and the divide between us and the old school European nations. We saw one of the director sportifs, Lucas Shinto, tweeting, thinking that
it was only a little pinch. It
was only a little pinch, exactly.
Yeah.
And Fran Miller, David Miller's sister, who is a media manager for Team Sky, she thinks it's also making a bit of a mountain out of a molehill as well.
What I've found interesting is the way men have reacted, and it's been stronger than the way women have reacted. There's been more men that I've seen that have expressed embarrassment about it. But we're keen to hear your thoughts. What did you make of Peter's pinch? Easter Sunday saw the 97th edition of the Tour of Flanders, and Fabian Cancellara didn't disappoint. Peter Sagan, second place. It was a classy performance whilst on the bike, really celebrating the victory. And Jürgen Roelandts, it can be argued pretty strongly, I think, that it was the tactically best ride of the entire race. But Wade and Scott, I want to take a look at this from a slightly different angle. We know the performance of Cancellara. It was the tactic everybody expected, nobody could respond. Sagan was good whilst on the bike, a little disappointing off it, and Jürgen Roelandts. But what about BMC Racing? This is arguably the biggest budget team in the world. More than $25 million is their annual budget, and they've done very little since Cadel Evans won the Tour de France.
It's typical dream team stuff, isn't it? It's a bunch of individuals, superstars who just don't work together, and there seems to be no cohesion amongst them.
The best result they've had since Cadel won the Tour de France was Gilbert winning the world title, but that was in Belgian colours. And we heard from Greg Van Avermaet a couple of days before the race saying that, I hope the race is harder this year than it was last year. Yet BMC were full of numbers at the front and nobody attacked. They did not take the race on.
Yeah, look, coming towards the decisive moment at the end before Cancellara attacked, I think they still had 4 riders in that lead group. One of them wasn't Torhushov, so another guy with a big pay packet that was out the back. But they had 4 riders there, so they needed to do something more if Van Avermaet wanted to make the race harder. It just doesn't sit very well. I think BMC really must be very disappointed with where they're at.
And it looks like there's some real tension within the team. I was at the Tour of Oman and watching them closely, and there was like that battle you have with your brother or sister for the front seat as to who was the team leader. And Cadel Evans was always in the front seat of one car. Van Avermaet was always in the front seat of another car. Gilbert didn't care, but it looked as if there was that real, this is the status of the team, I'm the captain, I'm front seat, going and coming home. In terms of BMC Racing, TJ Van Gardner and Cadel Evans, watching that a little bit further on throughout the season, but can Gilbert return and make an impact on the Ardennes Classics?
I think he can. And that's what they need. If he doesn't do something in Amstel-Flesch or Liège, then it's been a disaster for them this season so far. And of course, we've still got that big debate: what's going to happen in the Grand Tours? And we're starting to hear some sort of inklings that there is. I guess a couple of upset riders into who's going to have that leadership role by the time we get to the Tour de France.
In my view, BMC Racing is the worst value for money team in the peloton. They are not delivering on their budget against how much money they're spending. The other end of the scale, Europcar, they have a budget of around about 6.5 million euros per year. They were in this race. They were there as a wild card. They had guys in the breakaway. They brought the earlier breakaway back, and they had Sebastian Turgot finish in 8th place, one behind Greg Van Avermaet. They had another guy in the front group. As a marketing manager, if you made the decision to sponsor Europcar, you'd be patting yourself on the back and asking for a raise.
Yeah, like for people who don't know the sport as well, you would easily mistake them for a World Tour team. They're up at the front at every single race. They get more media coverage than anybody. Dollar for dollar, they're the best value team out there.
Without question, and they do it in every race. Yeah. They're not a wild card team that goes to a race and tries to get a breakaway. They go to try and win. Yeah. They took the race on as much as any other team.
I thought they went a bit early. When we saw them early in the race, on the front, 6 riders all lined out, I thought, well, here we go, they're going to get a bit carried away here, but they still had 2 riders in that, what was left of the peloton in the end.
As Mark Twain famously said many, many years ago, the thing that you will regret most in 20 years is not what you did, but what you didn't do. Europcar will never have the regrets of we did not try hard enough. You'd be delighted if you were a team manager there. Likewise, the other team I want to take a look at, Lotto Belisol. From the outside, the cohesion within this team is better than any other team in the peloton.
Yeah, they're just a bunch of guys looking like they're having a good time, and they're winning as well. And seeing Greipel up there absolutely destroying that bike for his leader up there, the team sprinter, it's amazing to see. And his tweet that you saw right after was he was genuinely happy for Roelandts getting third place.
For third.
Yeah,
Goosebumps for third place, yeah. And they had the discussion beforehand, obviously, that they knew that Cancellara is the outright favourite. Sagan was also going to be in the mix. Tom Boonen was the other one that crashed out early on. So they didn't see themselves having an outright favourite for the race. Had to come up with a separate tactic, and that's what they did. Put 2 guys in the break that would want to be chased down. Seberg and Greipel, 2 strong riders. They didn't want to let them get 4 or 5 minutes. So the other teams had the pressure on them to control that break.
Even Jim Okowitz from BMC Racing was quoted afterwards as saying, I wish we had someone that went with Jürgen Roelandts. I thought they would bring it. Tactically, Lotto Belisol were the best. Their team cohesion is fantastic. You see the Twitter banter between them, Henderson and Hansen and so on, with Greipel and Seberg butting in. They were fabulous. Europcar punching well above their weight. BMC a massive disappointment in my view. I'm keen to hear your thoughts. BMC, how do you rate them as a return on investment? Europcar, well, I really like the way they go about it. And Lotto Belisol, they rode a flawless race. They were just beaten by two stronger guys. What are your thoughts?
Now, for the first of our target healthy living tips, we're going to talk about the buzzword that's out there in the peloton at the moment. It's all about beetroot juice. Now, guys, I don't know if you guys are on the beetroot juice, but I've got some here. It's called Beat It Sport. It says that it's a stamina shot, and the entire peloton is on this stuff. Jury's still a little bit out, but it's all about nitrates. That's the buzzword. Having beetroot juice increases the amount of nitrates in the body, and that apparently allows more oxygen flow through the blood, makes the blood flow better through the body.
Why would it be any better than just eating beetroots though? Because I like my beetroot with some feta and a salad or on a hamburger.
I love it in a hamburger with some egg. It's fantastic. But this is what they're all using, and we're talking about a lot of people out there, and there's a bit of scientific evidence that's coming out now. Cycling Weekly have done a study. They did a series of time trials with riders, and there was a significant performance gain, they claim, from using beetroot juice. They also said, though, that it was just a small study to start with. We're going to have to do some more research. Yeah. But all of the riders are on it. Heinrich Hausler told me last week that he was going to load up on beetroot juice before the Tour of Flanders. He rode pretty well. We also know Mark Cavendish is a big fan of beetroot juice as well.
But there's the healthy living element overall. If you've just got that balanced diet, surely you're going to get the same sort of result, because the evidence, it's really hard to measure. And Wade, there's that placebo effect as well.
Yeah, and placebo has been proven to actually work. But I think when you read through all the studies, there's actually very little evidence to support, any peer-reviewed independent evidence to support that this actually does have a performance gain, from what I understand. And I'm going to be actually posting an article on this week from a registered dietitian who actually follows this research. But it's interesting how we're always looking for these wonder foods. And throughout all your guys' years of experience, have you ever come across a wonder food that actually increases performance?
Coffee.
Coffee, yeah.
Look, I haven't yet. You're probably on the money there. But look, this particular product here, it's coming in from Professor Harrison Weisinger. Now, he's a professor at Deakin University. He's putting a lot of time and effort, a lot of money into it as well. So he's a believer of the product. And I guess we'll have to just wait and see exactly how good it is once we get more studies in.
What do we make of the warning that's on the bottom of the bottle? Be aware, beat it shots may turn your own pink.
It's kind of that train of thought that, you know, if it doesn't hurt, let's do it anyway, right? Yeah. Just in case. Maybe it'll have some miraculous effect on me.
I will be trying it before my next bunch ride. I'll be taking a couple of these home, and have you had some? I haven't had any yet. Have you had any?
You love the smell, don't you?
It's strong. It should be in a salad.
It should be. Well, just be careful when you go to the toilet next time.
It's actually not too bad.
We have the evidence from a tweet from Mark Cavendish about the statement about discoloured urine. So he's on it though. Mark Cavendish, the fastest sprinter in the world. He uses beetroot juice. We know Heinrich Hausler does. He told me that last week. The entire peloton seems to be on beetroot juice. Perhaps it is the new wonder supplement of the 2000s moving forward.
This weekend, it's Paris-Roubaix, the queen of the classics, as they rattle the cage across the cobblestones. This is a race that if you don't have a passion for the sport, you will by the end of watching it on SBS. Scott McGrory, Wade Wallace, this is a race that just captures the imagination. Even the climbers sit up and watch this one. When did you fall in love with it?
Well, it was similar to last week when I said that I bought the VHS videos in 1985 of the Tour of Flanders, Gent-Wevelgem. Also, Paris-Roubaix was in that mix as well, so it's been a long time.
Wade?
For me, it was in the late 90s when I was a mountain biker, and I saw these guys looking like mountain bikers, all muddy from head to toe, thinking, what is this? And then, of course, George Hincapie, always having a go at Paris-Roubaix, being so passionate about it, brought that to the North American media, and then finally I got to see it.
Yeah, for me it was way back in 1991 when I'd really just started racing. It was on SBS on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, and I was being picked up to be taken to a race at 12, and I was hoping that the guy that was picking me up was going to be a little bit late, and I watched Mark Matteo win. He had the tongue hanging out like he was Michael Jordan, and he had this famous 6-year run. He won it in 79 as an amateur, 6 years later the first time as a pro, 6 years later the second time as a pro, 6 years later the first time as a DS. And I've been in love with the race ever since.
Well, you know how important it is, Wade? It's that important they brought in the big guns for the commentary. Matt and I, we've been flicked and they've been
they've got Sherwin and Liggett. Phil, somebody run there. Yeah, anyway. What about the difference, though, between Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix? They look the same on paper, but the climbed cobbles versus the flat.
Yeah, we talk about the cobble classics, don't we? And look, they're fairly similar, and the riders like Tom Boonen and Fabian Cancellara, these riders are obviously very good at both, but there's only been think around 9 riders that have done it in history in the same year, winning
Done
both
the
those
Yeah,
races, the double.
that's
So,
rare.
but the cobbles themselves are somewhat different. As hard as they are in the Tour of Flanders, they're much more manicured as the cobbles in France, the north of France. They are seriously prehistoric roads. They're Roman roads that are just terrible, very, very difficult.
You rode across them last year, didn't you?
Yeah, and I was really, really keen to do so because I always wondered, okay, did people just talk it up to build up their own romance of the race and stuff?
No.
But these are, every single one of them just wants to stop you. And to actually just hang loose and float over them, it's not as easy as that.
Yeah,
and
always looks easy on television when it's Bonin or Cancellara at the front.
And you're going towards the road, the sides of the road, like even on the grass, not even on that nice little strip, just to get a relief from it. And last year we only rode maybe 80 kilometers of it, and I had arm pump, and I was just completely smashed afterwards. Whole new respect for these guys after seeing it.
I hit a section of cobbles, in particular race in Europe, and just as we were coming to them, I was side by side with Johan Museau. And I thought, oh, okay, here we go. This will be a bit of a test.
Yeah.
So we've hit the section of cobbles. He was in the middle of the road on, my disclaimer, on the smoother section of the cobbles. I was in the car tracks, a little bit rougher. I thought, I'm just going to see how strong this guy is. And slowly I started going down the peloton. Then it was trying to look for a gap just to get in and get on the wheel.
Fantastic. Oh, well, you got it right last week. You hit the target.
I did.
And you've got the leader's jersey.
Yep,
You're
I
with
picked
Fabian
Fabian
Cancellara. This is
Cancellara.
the rule for this week, picking the winner for Paris-Roubaix. Cancellara's off the table, right? He's the favourite. We all know that. Who can beat him? Who wants to go first? You're both hesitating.
I think it's the entire peloton. For me, I think it's the peloton versus one man. With Tom Boonen out of the race, with Peter Sagan, we know now not going as well.
And that's how Johan van Summeren won.
Yep. Exactly.
When it was everyone versus Fabian.
Yep.
So who's it going to be? Because you can't pick the whole peloton, Scott.
I like last year's runner-up. I'm going to go for I shouldn't call him a dark horse. He finished second last year, Sebastian Turgot.
He was good in Flanders.
He was good in
Eighth
Flanders, and his team will be committed. It's back on French soil, and Europcar certainly did show themselves at the Tour of Flanders.
Wade?
I'm going Terpstra.
Nicky Terpstra. He was 13 minutes behind in Flanders.
He just got caught behind and never got back on, but I think there's no one else for Omega Pharma Quickstep. I think
13 minutes, Wade.
Yeah,
13 minutes
13.
behind.
It's just-
He's freshening up. He's freshening up.
It's a lottery.
I'm going to go with John Degenkolb. I think John Degenkolb can win. Alexander Kristoff is definitely in the mix as well for Katusha. Briefly, the Aussies, Heinrich Hausler. I think he can top 5.
He was looking good at Flanders for sure. He was actually looking that good. He was that relaxed. If you needed a deck chair, he was so laid back throughout the race, sitting at the back of the group all the time. I think he's on good form.
Baden Cook.
Looking good as well. He was riding for Sebastian Langefeld all the way through Flanders, but he did a very good job at that and it positioned himself very well. So I think perhaps this time he might have free rein to go for it.
And Stuart O'Grady, I think he's 12 months past being able to win.
Yeah, but he'll be good for Green Edge.
He'll be a factor.
His experience it will be extraordinary for the team.
Regardless of what he does, he's still the first Aussie to win it, and so far the only Aussie to win it. I hope that changes. Let's wait and see. So you're on Nicky Terpstra. Confirming?
I'm in. My money's on Terpstra.
And you're with Sebastian Turgot, and I'm with John Degenkolb, and the rest of the world is on Fabian Cancellara. That's it for this week's edition of the Bike Lane. Thanks for Target. It's great to have a supporter on board. The boys of the Bike Gallery as well, thanks for hosting us. As for you, other than Fabian Cancellara, who can win Paris-Roubaix? Looking forward to reading the debate.